I would like to take a moment before we get into today's main episode and to talk about my sponsor for the podcast. Podmatch is a new podcasting site dedicated to all podcasters. The platform helps hosts get connected with potential guests to appear on their show, as well as allow guests to find podcasts that will give them a chance to share their story. Podmatch offers many tools to help organize your page, from to-do lists to episode planning to potentially appearing on a leaderboard. Podmatch has it all. The best part, you have the potential to get paid. And who doesn't like to get paid from home? I like to. With an easy sign up, you can start connecting with podcasters and guests immediately. I have been a part of Podmatch since the beginning of May, and I have got to say that it was the best decision I've ever made because Podmatch helps your podcast grow. It helps you get connected with people that have very interesting, very compelling background stories that are just waiting for their story to be shared. So if you are a host or guest and would like to start building professional relationships, explore more opportunities, and have your story shared, I highly suggest that you sign up with Podmatch today by going to joinpodmatch.com/lethal venom to start expanding your network in seconds. I would like to give another huge thank you to Podmatch for sponsoring this episode. Now on to our main episode, and again, you can sign up at joinpodmatch.com/lethal venom to begin your podcasting journey today. Hello everyone, welcome to the Lethal Venom Podcast, the show where I talk about anything I want with the honest to God truth, no lies told. Today I'm joined by Miss Ana Murby. She is a wife, stay-at-home mom of 5, and is the host of the Honest Christian Conversations podcast, as well as a fiction writer. When she's not writing or podcasting, you can find her playing Fortnite with her family, studying Russian language, and watching old TV shows and movies with her husband. Today she's here and she's going to share her story of how she's become the person she is today, from growing up to now. So Anna, thank you so much for coming on. I can't wait to hear your story today.
Thank you for having me, Noah. I'm very excited.
So feel free to kind of just give an overview about yourself and just share with my audience a little bit more about what you do.
All right. Well, I am a mother of 5. I have so many hats that I wear right now, not just being a mom and a wife. I do my podcast, which I've been doing for almost 2 years now. And God's just been blessing it. And the more I see how He's working in it, the more humbled I am by that because I know who I was back in the day and I don't deserve all the kind, gracious things that He has done for me. And I'm very humbled by that fact.
So
So go ahead.
kind of take me back to childhood growing up and kind of what how life started out for you. And you had mentioned that had just mentioned that you feel like you weren't worthy of some of the things. So feel free to share what you did younger as a child where it's made you think that he's blessed me more than I should be able to be blessed for.
Yeah. So I grew up in the church. I grew up in a very, I guess, religious style Christianity where I did what I was supposed to do. I didn't really understand everything as to why I had to do it, but I knew that it's what I was supposed to do because it was what I was told by my parents, by the churches we went to. When I read the Bible, I knew everything I was supposed to do, and I was a very good girl, so I did everything I was supposed to because I didn't want to get in trouble. I didn't want to make waves. So I just really became a people pleaser and did whatever for whoever it was to make them happy to a point where I didn't really know who I was or what I wanted out of life. I just knew what I felt was required of me by everybody, and that included God. So when I came to faith in Him at 12, the reason I did that was because I was afraid of going to hell. I didn't want to
Mm.
go to hell. So that's what a lot of people say is, well, I didn't want to go to hell, so I accepted Jesus into my heart. I was already doing all the stuff. I knew what heaven and hell were. I knew all the things that I needed to know. I grew up and I knew these things. So it didn't really mean anything, I guess, to me other than okay, now I'm secure, I'm going to go to heaven. But the problem is that I never felt secure that I was going to go to heaven. I never felt like I did good enough for God, that if I did something wrong, he was going to be mad at me and I was going to go to hell. Like that's just how I felt all the time. And I hated it because I never knew where the threshold was that I was no longer going to have to worry about going to hell. Like how much do you have to do? And then God goes, "Yep, that's good. You're good. You'll stay and you'll go to heaven." Like I just never felt that. So I always strived to do whatever I could. I always tried my whole life to do for everybody else and put myself last, didn't think about anything that mattered to me, didn't actually do what probably God wanted me to do if I look back on it now. And secretly inside, I felt anger and frustration because I just never felt good enough. I was very insecure because of some abuses that I had suffered from different people in my life. And at the same time, when I got into high school, I got rejected by somebody that I really liked, and I finally confessed to them that I liked them and they rejected me. So I just had so much insecurity. I was constantly trying to be everything for everyone. I didn't know who I was. I was angry. I was bitter. I was confused. Whenever I got like felt doubt, I had to keep that to myself because I didn't want anyone to think that I was going to leave the faith because of my doubt. I was afraid to tell anybody, "Hey, I have a question about this," or "Why do we need to do that?" I just didn't want to do any of that. And then at some point in my mid 20s, after going through my first marriage, something inside me snapped. That was a very toxic marriage, and it was only 3 years long, but he was emotionally and physically abusive to my daughter and I. And after that, something just snapped, and I was done, just done with everything. I was done with God. I was done with being the good girl. I had already made mistakes in that marriage. I was looking at pornography. I was doing other things. He was also doing the same thing. Like we called ourselves Christians, but you could not tell the difference between us and somebody else who said they weren't a Christian. And that's absolutely hypocritical. And I always felt awful for that because I knew that that wasn't going to get me to heaven. But at the same time, I'm like, well, I don't know what's going to get me to heaven. So I just kind of towed the line of everything. But at this point in my mid 20s, I just said, I'm done. I don't even care anymore. I'm just going to do what I want to do. So I left my faith and decided to go the other way and did what I thought I wanted to do. I didn't have my usual teenage rebellion when you're a teenager like everyone else does. I was a young mom at that point and I just did what I wanted to. I binge drank for almost a year. I did a lot of sleeping around. I did a whole bunch of things that I'm definitely not proud of that I shouldn't have. And I knew because of my upbringing, I knew they were wrong. So I also had that guilt train following me this whole time. So I
Mm.
never really could get away from what I knew, which was frustrating for me because I wanted to. I just wanted to not feel the guilt and shame of when I did something wrong, but I just couldn't escape it. No matter how much I drank, none of it. I just always, at the end of the day, when I sobered back up, I knew everything I did was wrong. And God saw it and I felt the guilt of it. So I jumped into another marriage, which is not something I recommend doing when you have a lot of baggage from a first one. You really need to take the time to heal and make better decisions. But I didn't do that because I had walked away from my faith. I wanted to get away from my Christian parents. I wanted to get away from my daughter's terrible father. So I moved to Connecticut from California, where I was living. And after 2 years of being married, my second husband decided he didn't want to be married anymore. And when I look back on it, I get it now because I was not exactly the easiest person to be with. I was bitter, angry, had a lot of baggage. It just wasn't a healthy marriage on top of the fact that there was pornography involved in it as well. So that really didn't help, especially with my self-esteem. But something happened to me during that, close to the end of the marriage. I I didn't have a change of faith, but at that point, I was still drinking, but obviously the sleeping around, I had stopped that before I even met my second husband. But at one point, I was watching TV, or went to a movie theater with two of my kids, because at this point, I had two kids. I had one with my first husband and then one with my second. And I took them to a movie, and there was an advertisement for a church, the one that I currently go to, but they had their advertisement. I'm like, huh, I could use a break every once in a while. Free babysitting for like an hour. Okay, fine, maybe I'll go. Like that was just my mentality at that point. Like I had completely not any desire to be anywhere near God or anything. I wasn't reading my Bible, nothing. And I just decided I'd go and, get a break from my kids. So I did. And while I was at that first service that I went to, I ended up meeting someone who would become instrumental in helping me through my second divorce. She's become like my spiritual mom as well. But after that, while I was in the service, I really felt the Holy Spirit just talking to me. Like it felt like I was having a conversation with God, like we're currently having a conversation. Everything he was saying, I understood it, I felt it, I knew it was true, and I needed the help. But I just stood up and obviously didn't really say it to him. But in my heart, I said, I hear everything you're saying, but I don't care. I'm still going to do what I want to do. And basically just spat in his face and walked out. And then a week later, that's when my second husband blindsided me and said, we're done. I've got an apartment. I'm out. And that just wrecked me. I was not expecting that. I didn't know what to do with that. I was in Connecticut all by myself, just me and my kids. What was I going to do? I was just floored and depressed. And for 2 weeks, I couldn't stop crying. And then my former mother-in-law decided she needed to say something to me. And she never really liked me, but she was a Christian. And what she said was clearly what God was trying to tell me. And she just basically told me, Anna, you need to not worry about what's going on between you and my son. You need to get right with God for your kids because they need you. They need you to be healthy. They need you to be strong. So that's what I did. I dropped to my knees. I repented. I got right with God and I got back up, and I was not the same person. I had a desire that I wanted to try to save the marriage, which it didn't happen because you need two people to want to do that, and he didn't want to. But I was a completely different person. He even said so. He's like, it's like a light switch flipped. You went from one person to the next. And I have not been the same since then. I trust in God completely. I know where I'm going when I die. I do not live in that constant, am I doing good enough? Will I be accepted? None of that. Like, I just know that He loves me unconditionally and that I know that I am secure in my faith, in my spiritual standing. And yeah, I still make mistakes. I'm definitely not perfect. And He had to chisel away at a lot of the things that were still there. My pornography addiction was one of them, and my anger, which he's still working on me with, but it has gotten so much better even this year. It has gone away significantly from even the beginning of this year, how angry I used to be. And yeah, I have to learn the hard way with a lot of the stuff that he's taught me, especially with my pornography addiction. That was a doozy of a ride, and I certainly had to learn the hard way through all of that. But I am grateful that he healed me from that because it has mentally changed my mindset and made it so much more healthier than it was before.
Wow, that's such a touching story, to think that you've really hit rock bottom, and then there's just that moment of hope that comes in and says that is you may be at rock bottom, but that doesn't mean that it's time to float back up to the top. It's
Hmm.
so after this moment of having to go, okay, I want to change things. What was kind of your next steps after that? Did you want to try to move away from Connecticut where you were? Did you try to well, maybe I'll stay here, but just try to live a different kind of life? What was kind of the next steps for you after you had found that you really wanted to change your life for the better?
I love that you asked that because a lot of people don't, but it is a very crucial part of who I am today. And no, I did not end up moving back to California. I still live in Connecticut, but I did want to move back to California. Um, During my second divorce, while I was going through it, I really felt like God was saying, no, you need to stay in Connecticut and allow me to take care of you because my family always helped me pick up my pieces. When I went through my troubles with my first husband, we were living with my dad, and then I was living with him after we got divorced, and then before I moved to Connecticut. But when I was going through my second divorce, he really wanted me to move back to California so he could help take care of me. But I just felt God saying, no, I'm going to take care of you now. You need to fully trust me. Stay in Connecticut. And it was hard because I didn't have anybody except for two people that I had met at the church, barely met at the church. I barely knew them, but I just had them and I had God. And I stayed in Connecticut not long after my second divorce. My new friend that I had mentioned earlier, she introduced me to the guy who is now my husband, and we've been married for almost 11 years. So it was just like if I did leave California because I was afraid of what would happen to me if I had stayed in a place where I had no support, I wouldn't have met him and I wouldn't have my three other beautiful children that I have with them. So I'm glad that I didn't leave at that point, but I still did want to go back to California. And this was all before 2020 happened and the pandemic and everything. But I was mad at God after I had gotten remarried again and I had settled in Connecticut. I was mad at him because he wouldn't let me go back to California and be with my family and have my kids grow up with their grandparents like I got to grow up with my grandparents. I just felt bad. I had realized that me leaving abruptly like I did had messed with my whole really close unit family, and I felt the weight of that rash decision. So I felt the guilt and shame of that, but I also felt mad that God wasn't answering those prayers to let me go back to California. And at that point, I was starting to write my first novel. And that one took me 5 years to write, but that's because he needed to do this part in me. Every single time I kept writing that because I was writing it from the perspective of the main character being in California, because that's all I ever knew from my life. So while I did that, every single time I got to a certain point, I'd always hit a proverbial wall and just couldn't get past it to continue writing. And then I'd have writer's block. And then I'd switch it, do it again, but I'd still keep it in California and it just would not change. So I was getting frustrated with that. I was mad at God because he wouldn't let me go home and let my kids grow up with their grandparents. And then something happened, and I got to go to California to visit my family for 4 days for my cousin's wedding. I ended up having to go by myself because we couldn't afford to all go. The kids were still young, and it just wasn't going to happen. So I was really excited to try all the foods that I missed that we don't have here in Connecticut and just to see my family. Like I was really excited. No idea how excited I was. As soon as the plane touched down in San Francisco, I lived in Sacramento, but I went to San Francisco. I was super excited, drove. As soon as I hit where Sacramento starts, it just felt like this big, heavy, wet blanket fell on me. And like I felt immediate depression. I wanted to, on the freeway, U-turn and go right back to the airport. Like I just felt like this immediate, I have to do this. Obviously, it didn't because I wouldn't have been very safe. But that's just how I felt. I did not feel that excitement anymore. And I just felt depressed the whole 4 days that I was there, really. The food that I wanted to try, it did not taste the same. Being at my dad's house did not feel the same. Being around friends, it didn't feel the same. Like I wanted to go home immediately. That's just how I felt, is like I don't want to be here. And it was weird to me and I didn't understand it. But I was at my cousin's wedding, and I think it was 3 days into the 4 day trip that this happened. And I'm sitting at the reception and I'm looking around at my family and I see them talking to each other. They're hanging out with their friends. They're having fun. They don't notice that I'm sitting there like a bump on a log, not sure why I've been feeling so depressed this whole time. And then something hit me as I'm looking at my brother talking with my cousin. And I realized that their lives went on without me while I was gone in Connecticut. Like their lives didn't just stop because I wasn't in California anymore. I don't know if that's what I thought would happen, is that their lives were just as torn as mine because I wasn't there. But their lives kept going. And I realized in that moment that I didn't belong in California anymore. My life is not there anymore. And for the first time ever, in my heart, I said, God, I want to go home. I had never called Connecticut home in that span of time, which had probably been maybe 5 years, I think, at that point. I had never thought of it as home before, but that was the first time that I ever admitted it and realized that, yeah, I have a new chapter in my life. It's okay to move on. California's in the past. And I left that trip realizing that if I never go back to California again, I will be okay. And I haven't been back since for other reasons. Most of my family doesn't live there anymore anyway. But yeah, I'm grateful that God didn't give me what I wanted. And it's funny, we always think that we know what's best for us, but He sees everything. So it's like, no, trust me, you're going to be happy where you are. And as soon as I got back to that trip, I switched my character and the location for the story to Connecticut. And then the story just started flowing. And then I was able to finish it. So I hope that answered your question. But yeah, it was a major turn in my life, staying in Connecticut and trusting that God was going to take care of me.
That's amazing. I've lived in Alabama all my life, and I've been born and raised here for 23 years. I've now moved at different parts of the state. I'm
Hmm.
temporarily moved for college, but then I've come right back home to my hometown. So it's hard to leave a place when you've been there for so long.
Hmm.
But once you leave, it kind of gets, excuse me, to that point where it's like, oh, well, the place I'm at now is 100% more better than my original town. And,
Hmm.
you know, I think, and that's another part of your healing thing as well. I think it takes a part of your healing. Um, for your third marriage, did you tell your husband about everything that had happened before he came along, or do you kind of just keep it to yourself and not really share it because of the fear of how he'll react to how you were in the past?
No, the first date, pretty much, I told him everything because at that, he's 10 years older than me, so he was more mature than the other two. I knew he could probably handle it a little more. But he told me his baggage as well because we were at my house. He came over. I had my two young kids at the time. He came over to help me winterize my apartment and everything because I had no idea what that meant. I'm from California. We don't get winter necessarily. So I didn't know what that meant. So he helped me and he brought pizza over and we were just hanging out after I put the kids in bed. And I said, you know what? I don't have time to play around. This is my baggage. This is me. I have two kids, two different fathers, spewed out everything I did before that. And, he shared his stuff too. And it created a connection. It did obviously give insecurities in certain areas, like hearing how he had an ex as well. And, you know, hearing what I had done in my past, it kind of creates this tension where he has to learn, am I able to trust her, kind of a thing, and
Hmm.
you have to build that trust with the person just like you would if it were a first marriage. You still have to build that trust. but
Right.
he knows what I was, and I've made it clear that that's not me anymore. And what I did was be open and transparent and honest with him, which is something I never really was at all before that. So if I'm feeling negative emotions or something, I will tell him. I don't hide that anymore. I don't keep it in my bottle. I don't do the passive aggressive thing. Occasionally I try, but he doesn't fall for it, so it makes it irritating. But yeah, it's so irritating when they don't fall for it, but he doesn't. So it forces me to have to say, am I going to go to bed angry or am I going to talk this through? And usually I opt for talking through, even though he may not want to. But it just it creates an open and honest relationship. It makes for vulnerability and transparency. He knows everything that I had done in the past. So if something should come up, he most likely knows about it. And if he doesn't know about it, I will tell him what he wants to know about it. And he knows the passwords to my phone. He knows my passwords to everything. Like, I don't keep secrets from him. And that's what's important in a relationship is being open and honest and vulnerable and showing the other person that they can be trusted. And that's something that means so much to me is to prove that I am a trustworthy person because I wasn't for most of my life. I was not somebody that you would want to trust anyone with me. It was not, that's not who I was, but that is who I am today.
Kind of another thing that I've people might wonder is, do the kids really know? I know for your two oldest ones that you had with your first and second husband, um, did they kind of have a general idea about what happened during that time in life, or have they asked questions about your past marriages, and have your three youngest ones that you've had with your current husband, have they asked about your past life at all, or
Uh, yeah, my first two, no. My oldest is 18 now, and my other oldest is 13. So they know a lot of different things. My oldest knows a little more than my 13-year-old, although he's catching up too. But I make it age appropriate, and I also make sure that it's relevant to whatever we are discussing. But they know that I had a pornography addiction. My oldest knows about the stupid mistakes that I made while I was married with her father. She figured it out ages ago what kind of an awful father she has, but she also knows, how he treated me.
Mhm.
And my son's father sees him every week and half the week and into the weekend. So my three other kids know that I was married to my son's father, that he has a different father. They say hi to him, they're kind to him, he's kind to them. So there's kind of that niceness between us. And my 9-year-old loves to ask deep questions, deep theological questions, just deep questions in general. Ask questions about things she doesn't need to know, and she does not like it when you tell her you're not old enough to know that or it's not something you need to know. She absolutely wants to know, but
Mhm.
she's not quite there yet to know a lot of things. So I haven't told her too much about obviously my pornography addiction because then she'd grill me for more information. You are not old enough to know that.
Yeah,
But I mean, she does know that I had been married a couple other times. She knows all that kind of stuff. So, and my two youngest do as well, although my youngest is two, so he doesn't quite get it. But
yeah,
my 6-year-old and my 9-year-old do. So,
yeah. It's hard with kids because you don't know how to appropriately bring this up to
hmm
them, and um, yeah, I kind of had like a similar childhood growing up. I didn't. My father was never around when
mm,
I was around, so my mom, for the longest part of my life, never mentioned his name or
hmm
had mentioned who he was until I was probably 13. But she didn't really tell me the full story until I was like 18 or 19. She waited for the
mm,
longest time because I think she really tried to make my childhood be the most normal it could
hmm
be due to the circumstances. So, it's hard to know exactly how to bring up these kind of conversations with kids because you
Yeah.
don't know how well they'll take it or how well they'll understand it. But I think it is a good thing that everyone that you're close with it has a good bond with um each other. It's like there's no bad blood, there's no really ties that have to be fully cut from. I think it's
Hmm.
really y'all all have a very good congruent kind of love for each other and y'all are there for each other. So I think that
Yeah.
at the end of the day, really people can have their opinion, but they're all happy now. They've got no problems. Everyone gets along with one another fine. They don't judge anyone. I think it's a perfect thing. Um, your podcast that I mentioned earlier, the Honest Christians Conversations. Tell me a little bit about what made you want to start a podcast and kind of share a little bit more behind the scenes of what the podcast is about.
I wanted to start it because I wanted to give a space to people to have honest conversations about things that maybe they're thinking spiritually. The things that I would have liked someone to have clarified for me back in the day when I had my thoughts and questions and concerns and just felt too afraid to ask. I didn't want people to feel afraid to ask questions anymore. I wanted them to know that somebody is out there and they're not the only ones who are thinking this or that. So that's why I initially started the podcast. It took me a little while to narrow it down specifically because I wanted to start a podcast just like everyone else during the pandemic stuff. But during the pandemic, I did a lot of, uh, God did a lot of, I don't want to call it deconstruction just because that has a lot of bad connotation to it. Usually when people do that, it's because they're leaving the faith, they're, checking out of it completely. But I think the word just gets a bad rap because what deconstruction is, or what it actually should be, healthy deconstruction, is when you're demolishing the foundation because maybe it's broken, it's, not the right type of foundation. You break it and then you start over and you build a firmer foundation. That's what deconstruction should be. And that's what I was doing starting in 2020. So during that time, I had been learning a lot of different things about my faith and what is and isn't true about different religious parts of the Christian sect and everything. And during that time, it really just messed with me emotionally. Like I couldn't handle it. I was hearing how Christian artists that I grew up listening to were no longer Christian anymore. They never believed what they were doing. Some of them were falling away from the faith because they had, affairs and all this stuff. Like there was just so much going on with things that I once thought were safe and okay. And, you can listen to the Christian radio station. It's good. It's Christian music. They love Jesus. But a lot of the people singing it don't actually love Jesus. They're doing their job. They're singers. They're there to make money. It's like these were just things that were messing with my brain because I was learning these things. And I just got crippled by all this stuff and it was hurting me emotionally. I couldn't focus at church. I didn't feel like worshiping or singing. Like I just felt comatose in my relationship. And I said, I don't know what to do with what I'm learning, God. Like, what am I supposed to do with this? And at that point, I had already abandoned my first podcast, which was what I wanted to do, but I just didn't know how to do it. So I had abandoned it completely. And I was through this little flip-floppy time. And then during one church service, I just felt God saying that you need to talk about what you're feeling. I'm like, okay, but I was kind of doing that before and it didn't seem like it was working. And then I got hooked up with Podmatch and Alex Sanfilippo, and he just kind of helped me work through niching down my podcast. What do I really want to talk about? What do I want it called? And once I got the name right and realized that's what I wanted to have were honest Christian conversations, that's when it started flowing. And now the podcast deals with cultural and spiritual issues within the Christian faith, which is what I was learning about. And I wanted to share with people what I was learning, giving them a simple and easy and honest way to hear it without having to go and do the digging themselves, because a lot of people don't like research, including myself, but I do it for you so you don't have to. But yeah, that's pretty much why I started it and what it's about.
Well, I think you're just such a inspirational person. I
Mm.
think you've got so much wisdom in you, to come from where you originally came from to now. And I think it's just outstanding to have such a huge success later in life and all this stuff. And it's just such a huge inspiration. What's been the most rewarding thing to come out of everything that's happened to you?
My freedom from pornography. That was a 17-year addiction that messed with me in so many different ways. It messed with my idea of what true love was, what, sexual relation was. It it healed me from just desensitization. I don't know if that's a word, but I'm no longer desensitized to a lot of things. During my healing process, I really tamed down what I listened to, what I watched. And now when I see things, I see it clearly. And I'll watch movies I used to watch, and it does not hit the same as it did back then, because I'm like, wow, how did I not know that this was in that movie before? You just see things different. Like my vision is clearer, my mind is clearer, my heart is clearer. Everything is so much better because of that. And it's because I can see how much he cared about me to help me heal from this, because I had this problem before I fully walked away from him. I had this problem after I came back, and he could not do anything in me to heal me completely and to change me into who he wanted me to be until we had gotten rid of this problem, because it was a problem. It was an addiction. I just never called it that until I was finally absolutely going to be done with it. And he pretty much said, "Yeah, we're done. We're not doing this anymore. We're going to take care of this once and for all." And I'm very grateful that he did.
Well, I think it's really inspiring that you've really come out on top and you've had so much success, with the podcast, with the novels and novella that you've posted and have been able to share with the world. I think it's a huge turnaround to where you once was. Um, what advice do you have for if people are listening to this and they've kind of gone through the same circumstances you have, or they just feel lost with God, they don't know where to turn? What advice do you have for them of how they can change that and find their way with God and be able to live a very peaceful life?
I would tell him to be honest with God. I mean, I'm honest with him now, but I wasn't always. I was afraid to tell him, this doesn't make any sense, or I'm mad at you for this. I don't understand why you won't do this. I was afraid to do that because I thought I would get in trouble with him. And you have to remember that he is your heavenly father. He loves you. He loves you just like a healthy earthly father would. If you were to go to them and say you have a problem, a healthy earthly father is going to ask you to come sit with them, and they're going to talk through it with you and help you through it. And that's what he wants to do, because that's what he is a healthy father. I know a lot of us have had awful examples of fathers. I mean, you mentioned that you didn't know your father. My father, for a long time, I think the first time I remember him hugging me was when I was a teenager. And he was there, but I don't recall him being there in the same way he does. I mean, we have a great relationship now, but he's just not an emotional type of person. So, it's hard when your earthly father lets you down, or you just don't have one, or you just don't have a good example of what a Christian should be in your life. And we have to remember that that's not a reflection of God, that's a reflection of humans. Humans make mistakes. God doesn't make mistakes. He loves you no matter what, and He wants to help you grow. He wants to help you with whatever you're struggling with. So you just have to go to Him and talk to Him just like you would any other person that you know. I mean, obviously, think of him as a spiritual father, so you got to have some sort of respectful level there. Don't call him dude, although he's not going to smite you if you do. But, just like, hey, dad, you can go to him and say that and just pretend like you're sitting on his lap and talking to him about the struggles you're having, the bad day you're having, this, that, whatever it is, you can be honest with him and you can tell him, and it'll help you just getting it out there. A lot of times I'll talk to him. I call him my counselor. I don't go to a counselor when I have problems. I just talk it out with God because sometimes just talking it out loud, you can hear things in a different way than you would if you were just internally saying it. And sometimes that's enough, is just to talk to him through what you're going through, and he hears you. He knows your struggles and he's there to help.
Well, and Anna, I appreciate you so much for coming on the show today and really sharing your story and
Hmm.
really sharing some great tips and tricks with me about how people can do it and just really sharing your inspiring story. Um, if people would like to learn more about your story, and maybe they would like to get in contact with you and ask you questions and just really learn more, where can they find you? And more importantly, where can they also find the podcast if they would like to hear that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. They can go to honestchristianconversations.com. The podcast is there. My blogs are there. The contact page, if you want to send me a prayer request or just need somebody to talk to, everything's on that website.
Alrighty, I will put off her links in the description box below. I will put links to the website, her social media, and direct links to her podcast as well down there. So feel free to check those out. Feel free to follow me on the socials as well, Instagram and TikTok at Lethal Venom Podcast, as well as Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Noah's Podcast. And as always, listen to Lethal Venom wherever you get your podcasts from. I'm on all the major platforms: Spotify, Apple, Amazon, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Pandora. It is everywhere, so feel free to subscribe so you get notified of when new episodes drop. Thank you to everyone for tuning in today's episode. Hope you all liked it. Y'all all have a great rest of your day. Be safe, and I'll see you all in the next episode of Lethal Venom.